Daniel's here. Correctivity for homeostasis, autonomy, sovereignty of European peoples, genus and species, which also provides the means for coordination with others, other peoples, human and pervasive ecology. Okay then. I might be joined by Zedes today in this program, or maybe later today, if that works out better for her. I think that it'd be interesting to talk to her because she's a bit up in arms, and understandably so, at some of the misogyny and clearly backwards views among many of the alt writers and dissident writers and reactionaries, and has mistakenly associated me with those views. And so for that, among other reasons, I'm interested in talking to her. And also because someone like her, if not her, someone like her could potentially provide an important liaison to a broader network of people that can get the DNA program, the DNA Nations program underway. Okay, so but now for the on the matter of correctivity, in recent podcasts that have been going around, and here among others, wanted to address a few things that I might have a bit more clearly with Patrick last time. He would certainly be one that I wouldn't necessarily want to engage with Zed as, but he was on his best behavior here last time, and maybe that's a good thing. Maybe he should. I think that he should put his best foot forward. Perhaps he's overcompensating a bit to say that he's taken leave of the racialist stuff and gone into the, what is it, transhumanism? Well, for me, that's I can't get into that quite now, if ever. But he was talking about cybernetics, and I alerted him to the fact that it's limited for the fact that it's a mechanical thing. It's a concept that was that's derived of an engineering mindset. If I'm not mistaken, Norbert Wiener, kosher fellow, by the way, is the progenitor of that term and that kind of theorizing. And it's not that that these principles don't apply to biology to a large extent as well. Correctivity, in fact, and homeostasis is the essence of this, definitively what cybernetics is about. Self-correcting systems. But again, it comes of an engineering take of Norbert Wiener, who was an engineer and a mathematician, and then I think it was picked up also by McCulloch, some guy named McCulloch from University of Chicago and others. So it is a relevant idea, and of course used by again by Bateson and others. But it's also something that has been moved beyond philosophically for the fact that for its limitation, or seen for its limitation, in that it is functioning mechanically and below praxis. That is to say, below the more agentive and reflexively changeable realm of praxis of human interaction, and our concerns as a people has to be taken into account, as all physical and factual matters do. But it's limited, and it's in its application in the human realm. Okay, so provide that. But yes, correctivity is not only a idea of the pragmatists and kind of an argument for democratic input, interactive, participatory input from more than one position, an argument against a dictatorial position and the precariousness of that, as opposed to various positions being able to facilitate a group homeostasis through their corrective influence. Okay, so I wanted to also call attention to the fact and make it more clear once again, because Patrick, for some reason, I don't know how it is or why it was, but for some reason he interjected Schmidt's notion of the friend-enemy distinction. And I'm becoming more and more convinced that along with Schmidt's idea of the exception, are pernicious ideas. Yeah, okay, friend-enemy distinction might be a good way to rally your nation for war, but you should be asking if that's what you want to do. And I think not. Rather not. You have the exception in Putin, and Putin, is undoubtedly drawing friend-enemy distinctions. What you want, the kind of distinctions that you want to draw, yes, you want to draw in-out group distinctions for sure, and politicize them so that you can enforce them. You can warrantably assert that this is fine and legitimate within our civic bounds, and that not. At which point you'll be ostracized, or you are of an outside group to begin with, and not to be a part of our civic common resource. That is necessary indeed in order to maintain a group distinction, no doubt. But is it necessary to conceive of others as enemies? I think that would rather, it's unnecessary, and it's prone to engage your people in reciprocally escalating conflict. I'm not brilliant as he was. I'm not the biggest fan of Carl Schmitt, and I don't believe that friend-enemy distinction is the right distinction to draw between groups. It's too harsh. And I don't believe in the exception either. I don't think that anybody should be beyond accountability. Okay. So where did I want to go next? Let me check my notes. So yeah, well, nevertheless, I'm glad that Patrick is trying to put forth a more amiable relation. However, I don't want to embellish my reservations with him. However, one of the last times I talked to him, I overheard him say that he has no problems with OV fuck you, and that, I can't abide by that because as far as I'm concerned, OV fuck you, and that's his handle. I'm sorry for the vulgarity. That is what he calls himself. Has crossed the line by far of acceptability, and it's just, that's his problem. If he wants to try to redeem Hitler and go around denouncing and disparaging, insulting people who don't want to redeem Hitler along with him or argue about it because it's so stupid on his part. No, I want nothing to do with anybody, Tom White or anybody else who would associate with him. I don't respect his opinion and want nothing to do with it. And I hope that Patrick somehow sees the light, but can I really expect that? I also heard Patrick saying, really nasty things about Ukrainians, and I'm not sensitive about it. They tried to say that I was sensitive about it. So, well, they have an 80 IQ, and something about, I'll show you. I'll go in there with the boys and show you how it's done. This was before the war. I was saying this, I don't, that kind of supremacism. I wouldn't approve of anybody, towards anybody, but especially not towards other European peoples. Maybe it was just a knee-jerk reaction on his part. I won't hold him to it, but to say I disapprove is an understatement. Now again, he's a a young man who's really who hasn't whose anger at things is sometimes not not the kind of thing that not only that I can agree with, but the kind of thing that can really that can't be associated with if one hopes to survive and persevere in the long run as a political force. And again, he is kind of associated with a lot of people who are prone to really be quite nasty to women, and that's why if Zedez comes on the show, I definitely would not welcome. I just want to be clear to Zedez. I definitely would not welcome Patrick on the show if she came on, or anybody like him. So he said, "Well, what about these Azovs battalions and Banderas who are fighting so hard for Ukraine?" Well, I think the evidence is there that, okay, you showed yourself willing to fight and go berserk as berserkers, but you're being used by Zelensky and by the folks who don't care for your lives, and causing a lot of your people to get killed and yourselves to get killed and your cities to be, your homes and your treasures to be destroyed in a war that Russia could easily win if it wants to, unless you have more and more support from the West and potentially drag the rest of the world into a war that really shouldn't have happened. Because what should have happened was that, well, first of all, Putin has no excuse. Even if these crazy, unhinged Azov battalions fired rockets and whatnot that killed civilian populations in the Donbass, even if a few of their drunken and deranged members committed war crimes themselves in the Donbass and tried to prohibit Russian language, all these kinds of things. The most Putin should have done is take over the Donbass. And after that, prosecute war criminals. But to go into the rest of Ukraine and do what he's doing, well, let's just say two wrongs don't make a right. How about that? Even if the culpability of Ukraine vis-a-vis Azov battalion isn't exaggerated, if the kosher backing of it isn't looked upon critically, because, as the man said, the former campaign manager of Putin's stooge, Yanukovych, said, if the Ukrainians wanted to kill Russians, they could have done that in Kharkiv. Where they were killing Russians was where the Russians had a military presence, even if not exactly designated as such, and were attempting to hive off these regions for Russia. Now, I agree. I agree with you that the Ukrainian military and should not have been trying to so ardently to protect those territories as Ukrainian. Ultimately, if that would placate um, Putin, then so be it. But no, I mean, I'm disgusted with these right wingers from America and Europe who the constant just over sympathy with Putin's perspective and the over focus on uh, blame of the quote American perspective. Yes, of course, be critical of the Western nations, but don't do it without doing what this platform would do, which is to first look at, you know, at kosher predominance in tandem with right wingers and liberals, because these are the people who will. That's a group in tandem with individuals who will take the payoff or the license in the case of liberals. To do the kind of things that undermines the warrant of the Western nations. To be credible backers of the human ecology of ethno-nationalism. Okay. More of my notes. I continue to pat myself on the back for my promotion of this idea of unionization being at the essence or in the depth grammar of the left. Unionization and coalition building. Which provides for social organization and social advocacy. You know, when you think of it that way, and that's the way you should think of it, because that's what holds up cross-contextually, it's no wonder that our enemies don't want us to think in these terms and to want us to look upon those terms and that mindset as the enemy. Which is why, you know, and this is another reason why today and for the foreseeable future, I don't, or not foreseeable, today and for a time, I wouldn't want to talk to someone like Patrick, because he's still engaged in the kind of knee-jerk pushback. Even last time, I was having to clarify this again, that the left-right paradigm is indeed not obsolete, which is, you know, what the stupid right-wingers are, you know, what they go to when they see how foolish they are. Oh, the left-right paradigm, that's obsolete. Oh, this is what your enemies want. No. This way makes consistent sense. And I'm going to come into, you know, it makes consistent sense that as of 2008, they have been engaged in a marketing program, a characterology of the left as the enemy. Now, last time I didn't catch it before I left the stream, but Stephen St. James did something. He made a very, very incorrect assessment near the end of the show that I didn't say, but that I've got to address. He said that, well, Paul Gottfried is definitely not the nemesis, definitely not our nemesis. This is really, really bad judgment or bad assessment on his part, and fostering misdirection, perhaps because, you know, he's heard it from people that he likes, that Paul Gottfried is okay, and heard enough people that he likes that, you know, oh, the left really is the enemy, or whatever, and he's wrong. And if he looks at it, he'll see that there is an unmistakable pattern of people who are getting, who are having the loudest platforms, or among the dissident right, that they are, if not arguing against a characterology of the left, then they are going to a position of neither left nor right, of third positionism, but they're not engaging in the death grammar that I'm talking about. And where Stephen St. James is making an obnoxious, and this is kind of something that STEM people tend to do, but reactionaries of any sort, especially STEM ones, they will over specify what I'm saying. They'll make it too literal and try to make it too concrete when I'm talking about topoi, or I'm talking about a working hypothesis. I don't mean to say that Paul Gottfried is like the Wizard of Oz pulling strings, but, you know, behind a curtain, and he is the be all and the end all, the nemesis. This is not what this is to misunderstand. I'm not talking about him. I'm talking about his position a position which he well represents, an exemplar of those with the kosher motivation to do damage control and controlled opposition. And therefore, the characterology of the left, to the extent that it's not his doing alone, doesn't matter. I'm not saying he's doing it alone. Although he is I'm not the only one who has seen him as instrumental. Indeed, I think it was one article, I forget which publication, called Paul Gottfried the Godfather of the alt-right. And it's really, that's not really an overstated premise even. Most of these people in the dissident right speak fondly of Paul Gottfried, whether it's Academic Agent or Iron Duke 99 or well, some of the others. Most of the others. But whether they endorse Gottfried by name, which most of them do, all of them are going along with his program, amazingly, with his characterology of the left. Oh, another one would be Ed Dutton. Of the characterology of the left. What I call a red caping of the left, and with it, a red caping of the postmodern turn, the hermeneutic turn, and social constructionism. Concepts we need as European peoples for our homeostasis, for the homeostasis of our genus and species. So Stephen St. James does a disfavor, and a great disfavor in where he might be influential in trying to trivialize the issue by saying that Paul Gottfried is not the nemesis. This is really to mischaracterize what I'm saying, so that his position, and listen to him. He's recently been saying that he thinks that Zelensky is a hero, right? And this guy is calling upon this non-Ukrainian guy. Let's put it politely, calling upon Ukrainians to die fighting against the Russian army. Whereas they could live with their lives and their families and their infrastructure intact to fight another day with a better plan to retake their ethno-nation. Paul Gottfried, who said that his teacher, Herbert Marcuse, infamous Herbert Marcuse of the Frankfurt School, said that he was a proponent of free speech. Hardly. Paul Gottfried, who tries to make it seem as if our enemies are trying to take our religion away from us, our Christianity away from us, try to make it sound all rebellious, when in fact that's direction back into the yoke of Abrahamic self-destruction, of misdirection. You can't let that our kids get entangled with that egregious nonsense. That universalizing, obsequious, self-hating nonsense. You're supposed to sacrifice your life and your people for some Abrahamic sky god. I could go on and on about Gottfried. I've talked about him. I can embellish upon that, but no, it's not. It's the position though. It's not him alone. There's a whole marketing program that's going along with this that is made its way through the right stuff with Mike Enoch and cohorts. That's been facilitating this controlled opposition and its memes. It's edgy memes. Again, since about 2008. Before that, you didn't see much in the media about the left. There's one time during the Monica Lewinsky, during Clinton's impeachment trial over the Monica Lewinsky stuff. I saw Laura Ingraham talking to then governor of New Jersey, Christian Todd Whitman. She was saying that Hillary Clinton was far to the left, and Laura Ingraham was saying, "Oh, the lefties," but it's like this. It was my ears perked up. At the time, I thought that was good. I was happy to hear that. Wow, yeah, that's cool. But my point is, at the time, it was so refreshing and rare to hear anybody use those terms. But when did it become a thing where you would hear someone like Rams Paul and Sasha, constantly talking about the lefties or Lena Locktoff, the lefties, or these other trad women. The lefties. I hate the left. Blonde in the belly of the beast. The lefties. Well, they became encouraged around 2008 when the left became especially, their deployment of this depth grammar and weaponization against whites started to intersect into conflict with kosher interests, right? Then unionization, coalition building, organization, social organization, and advocacy, where it might be used in the interest of others to hold them to account in their greater than ever hegemony upon the 2008 bailout. Then that became the concern. And then you started hearing about Paul Gottfried and Richard Spencer saying, "Oh, we need an alt right, a new we need a new right, a one which will pick up, perk up, and make spunky and young and edgy to market, uh, and pick up where the stodgy old paleocons left off." Paul Gottfried being a paleoconservative. To this day, Nick Fuentes being a paleoconservative. Paleoconservative starting with the very kosher Frank Meyer. His concept of fusionism was a fusion of Judeo-Christianity and Enlightenment values. Something which is not going to alarm, quote, conservative Americans. Far from it. That's very much, that's the stuff they're enmeshed in with their constitution and their culture. So it would go quite well with one of Frank Meyer's proteges, which was Ronald Reagan. And it would work. It's a false opposition that would work well with, or to deceive Pat Buchanan into thinking that he's doing something so perfectly virtuous when he's being used as controlled opposition. There's Paul Gottfried. Maybe probably has a bit more awareness of what he's doing. That he's trying to fight against blowback. Not just blowback in the sense of direct anti-Semitism, but also the blowback, just the consequences of that, the nihilism that results from the other controlled opposition, which was the neocons, the stuff coming out of Leo Strauss and so on, in the Austrian school. Hayek, which Thatcher was a proponent of, although not exactly, and for reasons you might suspect, out of harmony with Ronald Reagan. Basically serving the same interests unwittingly. I think they're being objective and pure, following the magic hand of the market, right? So that's rolling along with Alan Greenspan. And then with Bill Clinton, the evil Bill Clinton, the utterly corrupt Bill Clinton, and his stinking wife. The neocons are gaining power, are gaining ground. Madeleine Albright there as Secretary of State. Undo the Glass-Steagall Act, which separated investment banking from private banking and allowed the investment bankers to make use of private money. But Bill Clinton's presiding over this political correctness, which is he's pandering to females, and this political correctness is reaching a crescendo with Bill Clinton's administration. People say that the 90s were a break from this stuff. They're crazy. It was horrible. And it was before the internet, so you couldn't even talk back. You had no means to fight back. You just had to hear like someone as it wasn't quite as insane as what's this guy? This video of this guy that was. I'll look it up later. There's this one late night talk show host, kosher fella, and the degree of anti-white hatred coming from him is surprising even to me. And he's like kind of mainstream. I'll find the name in a minute. But anyway, the political correct, the Frankfurt School stuff was really predominant in academia by the 90s. And in fact, my university department did the public relations and more, for the Clinton administration and the Gores, the Clintons and the Gores. So that prepared the way for the neocon reaction, a reactionary like George Bush II to be exploited by the neocons in Operation Clean Break. What's happening in Ukraine is another expression of that through Victoria Nuland and President Zelensky and Nuland's husband, Robert Kagan, who was one of the authors of Operation Clean Break to secure the realm around Israel. So if not alarm bells, something's got to begin to raise the suspicions. How is this serving the interests of Europeans when Osama bin Laden bombs the World Trade Center, so we attack Saddam Hussein? Well, here's Colin Powell with a vial full of, quote, yellow cake. Moment, I'll be right back in about 40 seconds. Okay, back. Meanwhile, the neocons, William F. Buckley and whatnot, they're William F. Buckley is doing the work for the neocons by basically hammering down the paleocons for their quote anti-Semitism. Whether it's Joe Sobran, who's saying used to be that an anti-Semite was someone who hated the kosher folks, now it's someone who the kosher folks hate, or Patrick Buchanan for his kind of Nazi sympathy, or and then the deplatforming of Sam Francis, another paleocon. And of course, also pretty much ostracizing of Paul Gottfried. Nevertheless, someone like Paul Gottfried doesn't mean that this isn't going to make Paul Gottfried nervous. That damage control doesn't have to be done, especially when the Austrian school, von Mises, Ayn Rand, Alan Greenspan, Magic Hand works its magic in the boom bust cycle to produce the subprime crisis of 2008, which, well, the only way to solve that by Paulson of Goldman Sachs is to bail out these bankers, bail out these bankers with everybody's money, and put the kosher folks into greater hegemony than ever for the work well done. And by the way, we will. What we need to do is, in order to maintain that position, make sure that nobody gets any idea to organize among the beleaguered peons. So we need Paul Gottfried's position, Stephen St. James, right? We need an alt-right, is what we need. We need those whites who are still rich, like Richard Spencer, and anybody who's willing to basically go along with the left as the enemy, and to encourage their Christianity, or even Nazism if they must, right? Even Nazism if they must. Scientism, as what's his name? Frame Games tried to do, less tactfully. He spilled 1,000 bags of beans on the way to trying to say that the left, still say that the left was the enemy, and alternative hypothesis wanted very much to agree with him and work with him on that. The right in its purity spiral. This is where we were in agreement. It's against those lefties who aren't dealing with reality. But my important thing is if we're going back into this brief history, as I've done, as I will. is to make it clear to someone like Stephen St. James when he says to me, "Oh, Paul Gottfried is not the nemesis." Well, he is. His position is a nemesis position in that it is like it exemplifies how the controlled opposition is working, red caping the concepts that we need and having our people fight against the very underlying concepts that we need. The left, the death grammar of the left is unionization, coalition building, social organization as such, and social advocacy as such, for social justice, if you will. They have this arguing against social justice. It's like, really. So I want to straighten that out. No, Stephen James, you're not right in that assessment. You're very wrong in that assessment. It's a very important idea to get for us to get across. And the reason why I'm not popular is because our enemies don't want this position to be popular, because it's correct and it will work. And they will reward and facilitate through their media those who will play the reactionary game and chase the red capes, who will take their coloring book of the left as the enemy and color it in. Now, more on how it is that unionization and classification as such, social organization and advocacy can, more of its salutary effects. What I wanted to discuss with Zedez and her complaints about my posting of pictures of beautiful European women, or tweeting pictures of photos of beautiful European women on my Twitter line. Not quite softcore, but almost. I think I started off with some things that were fairly soft, that could be called softcore. Not too much of that now. Yeah, I'll have some naked women, but I try to keep that to a minimum. Largely due to her complaint, which I'm sure represents the position of a lot of women. And I'm not going to defend my doing that. Even just posting pictures of clothed, beautiful women in profusion, which I kind of do. But rather say that I don't view Twitter as a platform to deal with serious issues very directly, and I don't take the platform itself very seriously. To me, it's largely a diversion, and for the enjoyment of aesthetics, whether it's art or, well, I focus on European women because this is one of our, this is a strength. This is something that we have. This is of ours. And okay, I can argue, and true enough that it's the second half of the 14 words, and it's been an inspiration to me, for sure. More than any Abrahamic sky god ever was. It's real. We're a part of that. We create that health and beauty. And that's kind of really the most relevant. It's been the most relevant audience of WN. The people who are really taking initiative have been young males, not. So that's where my audience started with, mostly. I'm not excluding other people. I'm not saying, women don't join in this concern, but they have not been. They're not exactly overrepresented in the ranks of this sort of activism. So I wasn't altogether concerned. Matter of fact, just quite the opposite. This was to tweet pictures of beautiful women was actually kind of a good indirect way of promoting Europeanness. I am not immune to Rosetta's criticism, which is not the only. I think that what's his name? The kid with the Russian name lives in Pennsylvania. He complained too that it wasn't. I'm not doing a family thing. Well, I'm not. Okay. And why? He asked me why I'm posting softcore porn. And I told him this is like, it's like a Betty Grable pinup. This is inspiration for the troops, as it were. It's not really. I'm not targeting a family. I wasn't to begin with targeting a family audience. I should probably consider, even with Twitter, moving more towards that. And I am shifting a bit, not that much. But I think importantly, this is one of the great things that classifying, unionizing, as it were, it does for you, for one, psychologically, did for me, is that it mitigates greatly against jealousy, because you're no longer, if someone were to show me a picture of a handsome, studly white guy, I'm no longer threatened by him as an enemy. I'm seeing rather someone who's now classified as someone on my side, who is a strong and powerful ally, a brother who's has shared interests. And this is what I would hope. This is what potentially someone like Zetas could come around to. Okay, she might not want to, look upon. She might not be thrilled by my Twitter stream. Might not want to look at a deluge of pictures of beautiful half-naked women. But with the concept that I'm working with, of unions, she would recognize that these are not her enemies, but people who are on her side, who are, in a sense, representing and potentially allied in her ethnic genetic interests. That's not even. I admit that that's not a full excuse. I mean, I'm a bit kind of sensitive to her complaints. Most people are not beautiful, and certainly not all their life. And it can be a toxic focus for sure. So I'm not really, I'm not self-righteous about it. I don't. It's just something that was taken up not very seriously. My Twitter stream is not was not taken up very seriously to begin with. Um, Although, you know, you get thrown into some serious matters like the Ukrainian war, and I can't. I have to. I have at least at times, though, as a diversion, I've posted pictures of. I've posted images of women and art and architecture and vistas and so on. Have to, at this point, put in a good proportion of tweets and imagery to uh, the war and to making sure that this stupid dissident right perspective, which is so overly sympathetic for Putin, that they continue to do the important work of this platform of putting forth the correct worldview, the correct perspective, so that normal, intelligent people have a place to go, as opposed to Mark Collette or Jason Cohn or Mike Enoch or whatever, or Eric Stryker, or the Orthodox nationalist. The healthy, intelligent way to go, that they're well equipped. I'm going to put I'll put the link in, and we'll see if there's someone around who wants to join in. Some listeners there, that's good. There are three very special people on the ground floor of the platform, which is going to save our people and the world. That, by the way, that's something that Zedez can do in the liaising for this platform. She can really, she can save our, she can be a part of saving our people and saving the world. She gets people to understand, not listen to the Christ hordes, the neo-Nazis, the scientific and the obfuscations and misdirections of the kosher folk. I'm going to check my notes again, see if there's anything I missed. But yeah, I mean, I've tried to slowly, there is, Zedez, I think that there is, in the reaction to feminism and the kind of very emotive anger of feminists towards what they call sexism, which is frequently really looksism. Lost in that is can be the legitimacy of that kind of critique. In fact, Kumiko, a Japanese lady who used to host with me at Majority Rights, is seen commenting under a thread that's resurfaced of mine, which was criticizing Roosh V, the manosphere pickup artist guy. She was saying that this is the problem with the complete sweeping aside entirely of the feminist platform, is that some very legitimate positions are taken away. And I think that she's right. There is room for criticism of male predilections when they are overdrawn. Just as there's room for criticism, especially now, of female predilections when they are overdrawn. But you see one thing that I see in the Twitter streams that's really bad, relevant to this conversation about the female form and imagery. I believe that there's been scientific studies that show that hip to waist ratios, a certain hip to waist ratio is corresponds with those women that men will find attractive. And I see time and again, and it's really obnoxious, the waist of women. They take photos of women and they'll Photoshop the waist to make it thinner. And you can see it. And it doesn't even look natural. And frequently they'll take a woman who actually is beautiful. And that's why sometimes I can't resist I shouldn't, but I'll retweet an image even though it's got this obnoxious photoshopping of the waistline. And she would have been better looking if they just left it natural, for one thing. And then you do have to ask, what is that kind of shit doing to the heads of girl? Are you I'm not saying it would be the only factor, but that could be a factor in contributing to anorexia, for example, or just making women feel like shit. Why? It's not. I don't want to do that. I mean, yeah, there are like really insensitive people out there. It's like, like, oh, you're not good looking. You should just kill yourself. I don't want to cater to that mindset. So I do have a hashtag. Nobody's picked it up, to my knowledge, of say no to airbrushing waistlines, hip to waist ratio, something like that. And then there's another thing, which has always been the case and always been a pet peeve of mine, is that somehow big boobs are necessarily more beautiful, and that, or worse, that only women with big boobs are beautiful, and that small-breasted or even flat-chested women are not beautiful. Well, the first thing that I would say in response to that, to women, to girls, is that you'll never see a woman who isn't otherwise, you know, really unfortunately, let's say, disformed facially or something. You'll never see them unable to get a boyfriend if they're small chested or flat chested. So it's not just not true that all men have to have that, or all men think that that's just like, the sine qua non. I guess the assholes are more outspoken. Oh, I like a big tip. Um, I will say that, speaking for myself, I like both. I've dated women who are flat chested, and I've dated women who are big breasted. And at first, I thought that I absolutely preferred flat chested, but having dated a woman with big breast, I like that. It's fine to both good. It's not important, and if it's important to a particular guy, well, whatever. He's a jerk, but don't get breast implants. And that's another hashtag that I've put up. Say no to breast implants. And this is the kind of thing that feminists could be doing in cooperation with guys if they didn't have this idea, these stereotypes of guys, and only react to the asshole guys. That a woman has to be blonde is another one. This whole, Northwestern European, I guess, aesthetic. I guess that it's fine, it's good, but when they start saying that is like, the beauty, the only beauty, that it really bothers me. You start having a yearning for biggish, interesting noses and raven hair contrasting with white skin and like that. I was listening to Kevin McDonald at Red Ice a few shows ago, and it's really unfortunate how, with his latest book, and I haven't read it, but even his other famous books I haven't really thoroughly read. I've just skimmed them. But I don't think that it's a coincidence that those who are all too Nazi sympathetic are gravitating to his site, and those who are stupidly prejudiced against Southern Europeans and Eastern Europeans even. Let alone, he's another one, about the left as the enemy kind of guy. But then again, scientists are socially gauche. But he's talking about how Southern Italians in particular, which of course is going to irritate me. I'm half Southern Italian. My father was. they're like, clannish and they cause problems, and that's part of why the 1924 Immigration Act was passed. Well, yeah, there are these elements among. There is that, but there's also pejorative patterns among Northern Europeans, which are at least equally catastrophic to our homeostasis. Matter of fact, I would argue that the Southern Italians in particular are going to that kind of attunement to group networking is a part of our European buffering, a necessary part of our European buffering that's being excluded with that prejudice. It is something that should be turned in our favor and used as a benign force in our interests, not like the mafia, which is all about money, but about truly maintaining group boundaries and protecting our families and extended families. And they could form, they're on the front line there, on the teeth of Africa. And nationalism takes. If Kevin McDonald doesn't like Southern Italians, or some Northern European doesn't like Italians, well, then don't go there. Don't marry them. But don't throw them under the bus. And nationalism can serve your interests and theirs without throwing them under the bus, and not destroying them, and not depriving that ecological buffering that the Southern Europeans would provide. South of France, and so on, in Greece. They have the antibodies, so to speak. They're more attuned to the Manichaean trickery of the Middle Easterners. But I don't agree, and I will say, unfortunately, that they're not individualistic, because they are all too individualistic still. They're Europeans, nevertheless. It's disheartening when I hear the way I hear some of these right wingers talk. Whether it's Tom White, the only thing that matters is Germans, or just shut up. I'm all for all Europeans, but I don't view some Europeans as expendable, and some Europeans important to the expense of others. Nationalism, ethno-nationalism, is a way of protecting these species, including Germans. Right? Okay, then. I don't know. I guess Zedes isn't here. It could be that she's expecting me to do a stream at 11 or 11:30 tonight, which would be 5 or 5:30 in the evening her time. Which I think she's in Montreal or Quebec, somewhere in Eastern Canada, Eastern time zone in Canada. last time I asked her to coordinate a time with me, she responded by asking if I had ever driven in a DeLorean. I was like, oh my god! I almost said like, WTF? What the hell am I doing here? Then I decided to play along a bit, and it worked. She thought it was a funny response when I said, "Well, the last time that I drove in a DeLorean was when I showed up to John DeLorean's place with a suitcase full of coke, and he looked upon it as pure gold." There was an episode where John DeLorean, who invented and manufactured this stainless steel car that he called the DeLorean sometime back in the early 80s. And he was entrapped. He was looking for money to finance his car company. He was trapped by, I think, the FBI. Brought a suitcase full of cocaine and presented it to him. He said, "Oh, it looks like pure gold." And actually, he's got the handcuffs on. He's going to jail. I said, after that, we took the cocaine and we drove down to Washington, D.C. and smoked it with the mayor of Washington, D.C., Marion Barry. People, people nowadays might not know this story. The mayor of Washington, D.C. is caught on tape smoking crack cocaine. And he goes to, I think he goes to jail for a time, and then he gets reelected for a second term. After he comes out of jail. That's this is Washington, D.C., the nation's capital. This is their black mayor. People think it's crazy now. It's been this way for years. For years. Most of you who weren't complaining were just happy with your materially satisfied life or something, somehow able to remain in denial. But this situation, this insanity, is not new. America's been insane since I can remember. And that's why I'm eager to talk with people, including and especially with women in a sense, to talk about how a perspective which can begin to wrest control for our interests, for our social capital, for ethnic genetic interests, that began to come to my attention when I took Heidegger's advice to put my autobiography into historical perspective of perspectivism, that is to say. And it began to anchor things around my childhood perspective in the 60s, when second wave feminism was becoming popular at the same time as the Vietnam War was raging. And the kind of infuriating incommensurability there of the high grumbles of the second wave feminists pursuing self-actualization, taking for granted the middle and lower levels of the hierarchy of needs, while males were required to go to Vietnam and die for well, who knows what, as the Country Joe and the Fish song. Don't ask me what are we fighting for. Don't ask me, I don't give a damn. Next stop is Vietnam. Ain't no use to wonder why. Whoopee, we're all gonna die. So those, I mean, the low grumbles of that the feminists were complaining about these things, while the low grumbles of males weren't even being addressed as a male thing, and the broader implications that it drew of the basic lesser valuation of their lives, that they could die even just basically almost out of the tradition and habit of war, rather than really a war of acute necessity, anything like clear and imminent danger. Now, I got pretty much an angry reaction by Kumiko in this. She's a feminist. She said, "Oh, women don't have their basic needs taken care of. They don't have, their blah blah blah." Well, in the West, they usually do, or usually have, and to violate their basic needs, while I concede that does happen, a lot of them get incested and raped and whatnot. Terrible things happen. You're violating a great taboo exists. To do that. There's a lot of social opprobrium and protection in the taboo and the securing of women on basic levels, and the they're being looked upon as enough if they're just presiding over ordinary concerns, routine. In other words, these levels were being taken for granted, which males could not take for granted as much. Their basic levels being, and group membership, and routine. Not enough, and also turning their back on the American story, the great incentive of America, the life, liberty, the pursuit of happiness, and through this narrative, the modernization of Aristotle's concept of self-actualization through the Maslowian hierarchy in the human potential movement, pop psychology thereof. Anyway, so through this perspective, this hermeneutic that Heidegger, that I gained, I gleaned through Heidegger as something that I should do. emerge as a way to uh, not only negotiate things fairly for men and women, but in a way that could make our lives better than ever. There's women who want to be mostly housewives and mothers, can graduate and perfectly satisfied with that, honored that. Those who are gifted scientists, another Manya Sklodowska, they can do that. Those men who don't want to take on the stress of being a world beater, but want to make use of the ages of resource that are manifest through themselves and our people, and want to enjoy life, even though they're supposedly functioning on an unspectacular level, though I think that as walking blobs of protoplasm were pretty spectacular, that they can do that. And then and it's not to say, this is not to it's not to try to rein in men who want to pursue the farther reaches of self-actualization either. It's just that in focusing on and bringing motives away from Maslow's hierarchy and back to Aristotle's concept of optimality, we mitigate greatly against reflexive reversal, and aberration was the word that I was looking for. Social aberration. Most of all, by setting, and this would be a white postmodern correction of Aristotle, even of his notion of self-actualization, by making the most fundamental level socialization, which would mean delimitation, which would mean group unionization. That is the most fundamental need. Membership, the citizenship. Right? Then that structures accountability, correctivity, homeostasis, autonomy, and sovereignty of individual and group. Again, it's important to have this delimitation. It structures socialization against the scientism and animal naturalism of which diffuses our people into atavistic relation to others, universal atavistic relation to others and to the world. A low common denominator, as it were. Natural fallacy. You start getting into the might makes right shit of Vladimir Putin. Or a Hitler. These right wingers they say that, everybody is likening Putin to Hitler. Well, who's doing that? Putler. I'm not following the media. that's doing that. There might be, or I don't even know, the media. I don't think there's that many, but it's the same. But those who would object to it or take it seriously are the same kind of people. It's like they think that Putin started this war. They're so naive. They're so naive. They're so naive. They don't understand that Putin had to do this. Yeah, sure, he had to do this. Jerk. They're the same kind of people who would say they probably think that Hitler started World War II. Yeah. So it was everybody else's fault. It's like Hitler didn't do nothing. Academic agent with this idiotic notion of the boomer truth regime. Oh, we gotta make sure that nobody thinks that Hitler was the worst anymore. That's really the most important thing. That's what you get from an Iranian guy who's been engaged in the struggle for 2 days. No academic agent. That's not the problem. The problem is that for decades now, those people who should be defending European peoples in Europe and in diaspora have also been trying to redeem Hitler. That's the problem. And they think that to be critical of the kosher folks means that you have to defend and try to redeem Hitler and deny the Holocaust and all that stupid shit that they're into. No, it doesn't mean that at all. And you're getting maneuvered into that right-wing bullshit because the kosher folks want that. And that's going to serve their divide and conquer. Because you, academic agent, are a fool. It's not a new, fresh take that you're taking. It's old, and albatross has been a drag and for a long, long time on our interests. Okay, we're coming up to the 2-hour mark, and I think that's going to be, unless somebody's going to join me, I think that's going to be a good place to take a break. I might come back later today if Zedez says she's going to join me. I'm not surprised that she's not here. But if Zedez wants to join me now, I will talk to her now. Otherwise, maybe she'll join me later. She said she would, that she'd make time. She said she's very busy. But I'm eager to talk to people who I think that might, even if I have a vague hope that they will help facilitate the concept of the DNA Nations project. I think that women in particular can be effective networkers of this idea, especially when they see that it's not associated with anything like, any program, any kind of like Sharia, any kind of like misogynistic stuff. It's not going to be abusive to women. It's not going to be. We're not a part of violence or supremacism, or let alone killing people or genocide. We're not about exploiting people. We're not about Nazism. We're not about. We don't advocate Hitler. We don't deny the Holocaust. We don't subscribe to Abrahamic religions, and we have to deal with people who do, but they will, I suppose, occupy different, let's say, counties, and in our nation. But our nation cannot our nation cannot countenance any Abrahamic religion as a religion in service of our peoples in its text and in its in its essence. It's not. The official position here will be that it's misdirection. It's false opposition. It's the red caping of our moral order and destructive. That doesn't mean that it takes away the genetics of Christians, and we have to find some way to work out the complexity, but we will. And secondly, that the kosher folks are a different people. They're not European peoples, and they're not a part of our group. That doesn't mean that we are aiming to do them harm. It's just that they're not a part of our group. They are a part of another group, and they tend to look after theirs, and it's up to them to do that. It's not our. They are not our responsibility. They're not the same responsibility that our people are. An out group. Now, that said, we're innocent. We're on innocent grounds, and that's all the more reason why someone like Zedaz should be willing to participate, or someone like her. Some women out there should be willing to facilitate our platform. Someone like Tiffany, or I don't know about Diana. Diana seems like she's a bit too committed to a liberal take, but maybe. And who else are we talking to with the women? Oh, well, I mean, in an indirect way, she's part Lebanese and part, she's living in the Middle East, so someone like Amanda could be a fellow traveler. She's definitely a welcome voice. She understands. She understands the reason why white guys are acting as they do, and white women too, where they have sense. She knows the reality in a way that people who haven't experienced the homies en masse don't know, unfortunately, and are not being apprised of by the media. Okay, so I'm gonna hang on for 5 more minutes so that we have around 2 hours. Well, I gotta stretch. My back hurts. Hold on a second. I'll be back in 30 seconds. Okay, back. So overall, I'm quite happy with the way this platform is functioning. Oh, there was one other thing that I wanted to get into. I was listening to Iron Duke's discussion, and some of the dissident writers are criticizing how the sanctions are going to operate in a dynamic that forces Putin to join up with some of the more autocratic states to wrest control of their currency from the petrodollar. And I don't. Economics is. I'm not defending myself. I don't think it's right of me, but it's never been like a particular interest of mine. But there's some argument. Oh well, Putin is he's going to stake the ruble to gold, and the ruble's already recovered, and the West is shooting itself in the foot by doing this. They're forcing more and more Russia and China and others and Venezuela to find a way to free themselves of dollar control. One thing I don't get, Heimerthar. One thing I don't get is how gold is a particularly good backer. I mean, this yellow metal. What the hell can I do with that? I could say, okay, what's a backer with oil? Maybe that, for the foreseeable future until we get to the hydrogen society. Yeah, that's backing. Is it better than? Well, what is the U.S. dollar backed by? Ultimately, it's backed by lead, by military power, right? Which connects the dollar to oil, and the petrodollar makes it the reserve currency. I guess what they mean by the reserve currency is that it makes it the most stable currency, the currency most able to hold its value. It's just relative. But it all, I mean, when I hear talk of that and of debt, I can't help but think to myself, like, that this stuff is human, all too human. And it is kind of like a combination of power and valuable resource that's going to back a currency. And where Henry George talked about, land-backed currency, that strikes me as plausible, maybe even better than oil and other natural resources. Maybe they work out some combination of energy resources, land resource, or site value, and perhaps unfortunately military power. Anyway, I confess to being not especially clear on economic matters, and I'm not. Well, one of the big advantages of a platform based on correctivity, is that it's expecting, anticipating, or acquiring even the input of people with other expertises, other with other focus. It's unfortunate that I can't yet, and maybe ever, open up the comments at my website for my experience of the fact that we've got a situation where people just want to troll and abuse, and they're not saying that they're not taking the opportunity to participate in something that is at worst benign for their interests and potentially excellent to, so minor corrections, yes, all for it. But we'd be even more welcoming of elaborations where concretely, here's where these right wingers are operating through the IMF or the World Economic Forum or the Council of Foreign Relations. That's fine. Do tell. Or the Federal Reserve or Goldman Sachs or BlackRock. I want to hear all about it. It's Larry Fink, Klaus Schwab. It's not just George Soros. Oh, okay. There's another thing that I wanted to talk about. Since we do have a few minutes. I looked back again on a podcast by Keith Woods in which he discussed the kosher makeup of the oligarchs that came into power, that took over Russia upon the dissolution of the Soviet Union under the Yeltsin administration. And my first viewing of that podcast I was fairly impressed, and then in light of this war and the knowledge that 80% of the Russian oligarchs are so kosher that some of the kosher folks like Abramovich were instrumental in putting Putin into power and remain instrumental in keeping him in power, as his relations to Israel and Shabbat Lubavitch and so on, instrumental keeping in power. I began to look askance and see where Keith Wood's right-wing reactionary position, which he cloaks as third positionism, but to inject that right-wing element, is showing its instability, because he concludes that video with Vladimir Putin, kind of riding into town on his white horse, cleaning the swamp of its kosher oligarchs, which he really didn't do. He took out those. What's his name? Khodorkovsky, because apparently he was trying to keep him out of power. But the fact is that Putin would be okay. He was okay with the kosher folks as long as they don't deny him the top spot, so that he can be the the kosherest of all. And again, he was, this is well known that he's been friendly with them since childhood. He's not, at all, let's say, wise or concerned with the JQ. This is matter of fact, he's submitted that infamous document to the United Nations where he wanted anti-Semitism and other forms of quote racism to be prohibited by law and all quote xenophobia and all that kind of stuff. In other words, he's not a proponent of ethno-nationalism. And there's Keith Woods, like the rest of these dissident writers, is like they continue to defend this guy who is really committing this crazy, evil attack on Ukraine. And then you got Halsey English, this kosher guy who Stephen St. James is saying, "Oh, Gottfried, he's not a nemesis." Well, he's there with Kato, who's repeatedly saying, "Oh, Ukraine is just this fourth world country, and Americans can't even see this place on the map, and what do you care? And so what? And I don't care." And Halsey English is literally saying, "I don't care if Putin nukes this off the face of the earth." Well, this is what these particular kosher folks anyway are thinking of Ukrainian people. And someone like Aaron Duke, this military guy, he's functioning on that level. It's like, oh, he's got people saying, oh, he's like, oh, you got people, everybody, all sympathetic with Ukraine, like you're not supposed to be sympathetic to Ukrainian people. No, it's the Operation Clean Break Zelensky regime that's the problem, and their useful as a battalion idiots that are inflaming this war or exacerbating this war. And it just amazes me. It amazes me the way someone like the Orthodox nationalists or some of these other kind of military-minded people, that their neural pathways seem to go right into calculations of strategy and military production and numbers. And they act like when people look at people being killed, a mother grieving over her dying infant, oh, they're trying to play up to your sympathy and everything. Oh, I mean, like you're really not supposed to care about Ukrainians as fellow Europeans or something. You're supposed to think about how shrewd an operator that Putin is, and how stupid the West was for we're all guilty of doing something terrible. It's like, and oh, they shouldn't have provoked Putin. Who's they? And what excuse does Putin really have? Okay, so Operation Clean Break used the Azov battalion. And I warn these right-wingers that their rigidity is a lack of accountability is perfect to be deployed in the interest of the kosher folks, and has been, that they're going to be the ones who are taking it to the separatists in Donbass. And they should not be. They shouldn't have been doing that, but they shouldn't have been doing that. But it was this. They were being used. And they were being overly zealous. Now maybe I don't know enough about, and it's all too easy for me to say that these eastern provinces should have been allowed to go their separate way to Russia. But it sure seems to me like that's what should have happened. And the only defense that you can make, or not the only, the big defense against what Putin's doing is that the Azovs weren't attacking Russians in the rest of Ukraine. They were attacking in this separatist region because they didn't want these regions to break off. So it wasn't strictly an anti-Russian thing. It was anti-Russian in as much as they wanted to take off these regions. And I believe, it seems to me, from what I can see at the moment, that was a mistake, but a bad mistake, at the behest of probably not of kosher and right wing. You know who we will blame here, a neoliberal backing. But it doesn't excuse Putin for attacking the rest of Ukraine. Take over the Donbass, move Russian troops into these two provinces. I could have seen that. I think it's unfortunate that that he's already taken over Crimea, but whatever. We could maybe soften that grip in the long end. But that's the most that Putin should have done. The limitations on other things that might have come through the rest of the Ukraine are issues that we're all concerned with as ethno-nationalists. And when I hear someone like Joseph Cotto on Paul Gottfried Cotto cast saying that Ukraine is this pathetic, abysmal third world country. Well, I've been to Lvov, and I can't imagine a more replete, abundant with all the latest technological refinements, cultural amenities, cafes, bars, restaurants of all these different kinds. I'm not saying that the money that sponsored this isn't isn't corrupt, but the fact remains. And maybe, okay, I'm not getting into the gross domestic product, and undoubtedly there's lots and lots of poor people on the outskirts, throughout the nation. But to characterize Ukraine as a third world country, well, you go to Lvov and tell me that, you're seeing a third world country. Look at some of the videos that I put up on my YouTube channel. I put a couple of them when I'm walking around Lvov. I criticized myself earlier for not being more adept, you're more apprised of the workings of economics. But I sometimes get the impression of these people who are focused on economics that they're not exactly seeing the whole picture of the lived life. Look at Lvov and tell me that's a third world nation and a third world people. I had the same impression when I first came to Poland back in 1996. You heard all your life about how backwards and terrible, or for that matter, Petersburg in Russia. You hear all your life how backwards and terrible these places are, how economically, how wonderful and economically advanced that America is, and then you go to these places, Gdansk in Poland or Petersburg in Russia, and you're thinking to yourself, this is the place that's supposed to be so terrible. These are the people that are supposed to be like hunchbacked and pathetic and living, just this third world life. It infuriated me, quite frankly. The deception, and someone like Joseph Kato, he speaks of Ukraine with this kind of contempt, the same contempt as if that is exaggerated even by the standards of times when these places were behind the Iron Curtain. I mean, even then, it was just like you would feel sorry for them. You wouldn't talk about them like they're, why in the world would we possibly care about these people? Which is the position that Joseph Kato's taken. You hear him, you think, okay, well, he's kosher, but almost sort of seems like a nice guy. But the way he talks about Ukraine is not nice. Yeah, there are neo-Nazis there. The Bandera types, and that's unfortunate. I'm not going to like that either. Bandera having been someone who slaughtered whole villages of Polish men, women, and children. That's really unfortunate. That's something that can be addressed with the correction of Hitler's epistemological error. So be part and parcel of that. But I do agree with those who say that this is not an overwhelming majority opinion by any means of Ukrainian people, that they would like to go and kill but they'd like to go and kill people. They want their nation for sure. And I think that the Polish people, for example, have shown that they understand this too, in the way they've been so receptive and helpful to the Ukrainian refugees, despite this bitter history in fighting over that area of Western Ukraine. In some cases, not even fighting, but just sort of getting slaughtered. Well done, Polish people. In the way you've helped the Ukrainian refugees. Very good. And I think a lot of people deserve congratulations for their support, whether they fully articulated it or not, of Ukrainian ethno-nationalism, of the right to sovereignty and autonomy, and their condemnation of Putin. A lot of dissident writers who are taking a contrary stance to that position, and they're just dead wrong. Okay, so that's enough for today. Thank you for joining me. I might be back later if Zedez says that she'll join me. Otherwise, those are the things that I wanted to make clear. So, 14 and over and out.